And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello, and welcome to Jiggers' place, where we're hearing two microphones, even though I've only set one to go. Give me 1 second. There we go. Nope. Problem. You know, I got a new laptop and thought it would make life easier, but it doesn't. Okay, give me 1 more minute. That should do it. Okay, so welcome to Jiggers' place. This is the first one after the switch to standard time, and so it's dark out. People are, driving down my street going home to work. It's rainy and cold here. In fact, it was so cold I actually had to turn my thermostat up a little bit so the heat would come on because I have that thin California blood. So thanks for joining me this afternoon or evening, depending on where in the world you are. On this episode of Jiggers' Place, I'm going to be talking about Aesop's Fables. Now, if you've never heard of Aesop's Fables, nonetheless, it's very likely that you've heard some of them. The stories are famous. They've been told and retold, made into movies, TV shows, all kinds for as long as there's been popular entertainment. So in honor, I'm going to obviously talk more about Aesop's Fables after I mix the cocktail. But in honor of this topic, I came up with a cocktail using my co-cocktail creator, ChatGPT. It's a gin cocktail and it's called The Fox and the Grapes, which is one of the best known of Aesop's Fables. Okay, and it's made with London dry gin. I'm going to be using just Boodle's London dry gin. This is just a standard, just good regular London dry gin. That's what it is. And I'm going to be using grape juice. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, gin and grape juice? Yeah, that's what I thought. But I figured we'll give it a shot, right? The worst that'll happen is it won't be drinkable. And then we're going to use a little lime juice and a little simple syrup, which is just a mixture of sugar and hot water. In this case, I'm using pre-mixed simple syrup. And that's really, and a dash of aromatic bitters. So I'm going to use some Angostura bitters here. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'm going to use some Underberg. I haven't used this in a long time, and try something a little bit different. Okay, got my shaker with ice. I've got my rocks glass with ice as well. Okay, so we're going to start out with 2 ounces of London dry gin. Here we go. And gin is such a nice spirit. There's so many different gins made now all over the world. I was looking at my gin collection a little while ago, deciding what I wanted to use. I realized I have 2 gins from France. I never really think of gin as coming from France. Okay, and 3/4 of an ounce of grape juice. By the way, if you want to get if you're not getting the recipes for the cocktails, really easy to get them. Just go to my website, bemel.com, B as in building, EMEL.com, and sign up for my email list. And then you will, around 8 o'clock the day of Jiggers' Place, you will get an email that has the recipe, and you can make it along with me, or whatever you choose to do. Okay, and then so this is half an ounce of, I hope, half an ounce of lime juice. What do we got going on here? Oh, here we go. I see. This is a new one I haven't used before. That's right. Yeah, let's see. Here we go. Okay. The cap doesn't come off. So, all right, and let's see. Where is the? Is this it? Yeah. Okay. So half ounce of lime juice and half ounce of simple syrup. So this is a pretty simple cocktail. The ingredients are all, probably stuff that you have around the house or pretty easy to find. Nothing particularly exotic, no liqueurs or anything like that. Okay, that in there. And we're going to shake it up. Now you may be wondering, why am I having an iced cocktail on a cold, rainy evening? Well, because that's just, how it is. So we'll shake the cocktail for about 20 seconds or so, making sure all the ingredients mix, making sure some of the water melts and opens up the flavors. You can see, if you haven't watched the show before, see how the shaker is getting ice on the outside. That shows you it's icing down, which is good. Okay, a couple more seconds here. Okay, and we will pour this out. Ooh, it's got a great color. I'll give it that. Okay, and as they say, scumps. You know what? It's not bad. Okay, I'll see you over on the couch. Okay, here we are. Do I look clear? Yeah, this is I got a new laptop, so I don't have to undo my other computer that doesn't really work that well. You know what? It's very refreshing. I thought about making it with some sparkling grape juice that I had, but I thought that was maybe going to be too much. So this turned out pretty good. It's not frankly not one of the best ones I've made, but it's pretty good. So sitting here in my living room, you can see I have my throws in case it gets really cold. My fireplace is lit, although it's not a wood. It is a wood burning fireplace, but I can't burn wood in it because the chimney is off kilter because we have earthquakes here in Los Angeles. And my dear friend Laura gave me a beautiful gift when I was visiting her and her husband Richard during Halloween. It's a handmade wooden, it looks almost like a bridge with tea lights on it, and they're battery operated tea lights in these beautiful blown glass cups, and they shimmer just like real lights. So it's nice and warm feeling here on a cold and rainy night. So this is my copy of Aesop's Fables. You can see it's got great illustrations on it. Mostly it's animals, or it's all animals on the cover. A lot of the Aesop's Fables are around animals that may be anthropomorphized, although there are sometimes people appear in them. And if you look here on the spine, you'll see there's one human character, and you'll notice here there's a rabbit and a tortoise, because the famous
story of the tortoise and the hare is an Aesop's fable. So this book has, this book is the Illustrated Junior Library. So it's made for children. The original Aesop's fables were written in Greek. Aesop was a Greek, and let's see. There's, gosh, I think in this book there's close to 200 of them. So I'll give you just a brief history of Aesop's fables. So, as the term implies, a fable, it's a very short story. Most of the stories in this book are only a page long. Now, they may be abbreviated for children, but if you're going to read something to your children, they're perfect. And they they express I was thinking about how I wanted to explain this. We're adults. Our values have, I think, long since been pretty well set. So, the idea of teaching us values, not really. But it's nice to be reminded of them from time to time. And so, reading these stories to our children, when my daughter was very small, or very young, I should say, because she's still small, I used to read these to her, and they're really delightful, and they remind me of having them read to me as a child, I think, or maybe that's just in my imagination, and of the values that I seek to live by. So they're as I mentioned, they were at least traditionally attributed to Aesop, a storyteller who it's thought lived in Greece during the 6th century BCE. Very little, if anything, is known about Aesop. There are scholars who believe that he never really existed, that this is, it was sort of like a personae dratus, dramate, that was put together. I don't know if that's the real word, by the way. A dramatic person, so to speak, who originally came up with them. They were for centuries retold orally, so they weren't originally written down. There's no sort of copy of Aesop's fables, from 2,500 years ago. Like most stories of that time, including are from the ancient history, Beowulf and such, Gilgamesh. Originally, they were transmitted orally, and so there's no sort of authoritative text the way you might have for Mark Twain or even William Shakespeare. We have Shakespeare's First Folio, which is considered to be the authoritative text of all of his plays and sonnets, etc. But that is not the case with Aesop's fables. So, and according to my notes, I didn't realize. So they were first compiled in written form around the 4th century BCE by various Greek writers. So they've been around for roughly 2,400 years in some kind of written form. Okay. And they were very, very popular in both the Greek and the Roman worlds. So, they've been popular for a long, long time. And of course, over time, they were translated into numerous languages, including English, which is the language in which I read them. And probably two of the most famous are ones that I've already mentioned: the fox and the grapes, and the tortoise and the hare. I'm gonna talk about some of the fables a little bit later in the show, but you'll recognize several of the ones that I mentioned and read. I'm going to read a few of them to give you a sense of them. They're short. They're very pithy in many cases. Okay, so as we do, right? Why am I talking about Aesop's Fables? Why should you care? Right? We're all adults, as I mentioned a little while ago, and these stories are best known for being these days, especially read to children. Well, so I came up with 6 reasons. The first one is the moral lessons. In every fable has a moral lesson that is at the crux of the tale. They are absolutely timeless. And as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I wouldn't expect reading, Aesop's Fables to change your, your values. But it's good to remind ourselves of our values. And I think in some cases to hold in the back of our minds a charming story to illustrate something makes it easier to call them back. That's one of the reasons why I like Aesop's Fables as well. Number 2, the storytelling is absolutely engaging. The anthropomorphizing of the animals, the way the characters interact. Again, I'm going to use this word a lot with respect to Aesop's Fables, but they are charming. And there's just not a lot in our society anymore that qualifies as charming. There's Reese Witherspoon still to this day. So, I won't go into the story, but I can tell you firsthand that she has been charming. Well, certainly, her whole film, many of her films are incredibly charming, whether it's Sweet Home Alabama, whether it's Legally Blonde, but the only time I ever interacted with her was when she was a teenager, and it was clear even under the circumstances through which we met, just an enormously charming young woman. So beyond Miss Witherspoon, I can't think of anything. Nothing comes to mind in terms of charming. Oh, no, not charming. Elegant, but not charming. So, okay. So, anyway, Aesop's Fables also give us cultural insight into our culture, or if you will, more of the sort of genesis of our culture. So, I think that though they came out of Greek society, for those of us who follow the Judeo-Christian tradition, they absolutely ring true, with how we look at life, and so and they also at the same time give us a window into Greek society and Greek culture. Give us a basis for understanding it. And, Greece and Rome, cultural Greece and Rome anyway, form a significant part of the foundation of Western culture. I talked a few shows ago about Greek dramatic literature, which is at least as far as I know, the original dramatic literature, and so to have insight into that genesis, I think is important in understanding our own time. Next, they give us an opportunity to improve our critical thinking. So the moral of each fable is not necessarily obvious. So we need to ponder them a little bit and to figure out, what is Aesop trying to tell me, right? And that's a very valuable exercise. Keeps our brains young, if nothing else. Okay, I mentioned this already. They're suitable for all ages. small children, you know, older children. I think teenagers could benefit from reading them, although they probably don't want to have them read to them the way a child might. And adults, they are stories that they are perennial stories. We can keep coming back to them year after year, time after time in our lives. And then finally, I think they inspire a sense of creativity. So the way the animals interact with each other, interact with people. Uh, you can see it throughout, especially children's literature. You look at something like Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass and what she found there, Lewis Carroll. So you can see in Aesop's Fables the antecedents to other great works like Lewis Carroll's work, Toad Hall. I'm trying to think of the name of the book. I can't think of the name of that book. But also, gosh, I had another one in mind now. I don't know what's happening to my memory. So in Uncle Tom's Cabin, the tales of Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear and Brer Fox, definitely are an echo. I don't know that Harriet Beecher Stowe had read Aesop's Fables. I suspect she had. So there's lots of books that seem to connect to this original idea of animals sort of acting like humans. Okay, so I think they can inspire our own creativity, and it certainly appears as if they inspired the creativity of others. Like I said, especially the writers of children's books. Three Little Pigs, and that's another one that comes to mind. Charlotte's Web. E.B. White, so many of them. So okay, so that's why I think you should read, and they're short, so you're not making a major commitment. You can just kind of read them as you can. Okay, so I picked out 8 of them to read. And so you can sit back. How long ago was it that somebody read to you, right? Uncle Kevin's going to read to you now. But no, I it's a cold, rainy night, at least here in Los Angeles. So, let's read some stories together. Okay. So the first one is The Ant and the Grasshopper. Now, if you're a classic Walt Disney fan, this was made into a cartoon. I think it was one of the Silly Symphonies, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. Okay. And so here's the story. One frosty autumn day, an ant was busily storing away some of the kernels of wheat which he had gathered during the summer to tide him over the coming winter. A grasshopper, half perishing from hunger, came limping by. Perceiving what the industrious ant was doing, he asked for a morsel from the ant's store to save his life. "What were you doing all during the summer while I was busy harvesting?" inquired the ant. "Oh," replied the grasshopper, "I was not idle. I was singing and chirping all day long." "Well," said the ant, smiling grimly as he locked his granary door, "since you sang all summer, it looks as though you would have to dance all winter." Maybe that seems kind of harsh by our standards. Right. So the moral of the story, at least according to this particular version, it is thrifty to prepare today for the wants of tomorrow. Or in adult terms, delay gratification, right? Delaying gratification is what allows us to accumulate wealth and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to get into finances. That's my other shows. But that's the moral here. Okay, so the ant and the grasshopper, one of the, I think, 5 best known of Aesop's fables. Okay. The next one is the basis for our cocktail. Okay, the fox and the grapes. Mr. Fox was just about famished and thirsty too, when he stole into a vineyard where the sun-ripened grapes were hanging on a trellis in a tempting show, but too high for him to reach. He took a run and a jump, snapping at the nearest bunch, but missed. Again and again he jumped, only to miss the luscious prize. At last, worn out with his efforts, he retreated, muttering, "Well, I never really wanted those grapes anyway. I am sure they are sour and perhaps wormy in the bargain." Right? And the moral is, any fool can despise what he cannot get. Right? And maybe certainly I've caught myself at times saying rather, shall we say, catty things. And then when I caught myself, I realized, no, this is coming from a place of jealousy. Somebody else was able to accomplish something or do something or had something that I wanted that for whatever reason I couldn't do or I was unable to get for myself. And rather than be envious of them, I was dismissive or worse toward them. And of course, the tale of the fox and the grapes, right, illustrates that for us. And again, this is why I think it's so good to read Aesop's fables, because they can help us reflect on our own behavior and hopefully improve it. Okay. Next, we're used to hearing this tale called the tortoise and the hare. This version calls it the hare and the tortoise. Okay, this is a little bit longer than the first two. Okay, all right. A hare was continually poking fun at a tortoise because of the slowness of his pace. The tortoise tried not to be annoyed by the jeers of the hare, but one day, in the presence of the other animals, he was goaded into challenging the hare to a foot race. "Why, this is a joke," said the hare. "You know that I can run circles around you." "Enough of your boasting," said the tortoise. "Let's get on with the race." So the course was set by the animals, and the fox was chosen as judge. He gave a sharp bark, and the race was on. Almost before you could say scat, the hare was out of sight. The tortoise plodded along at his usual unhurried pace. After a time, the hare stopped to wait for the tortoise to come along. He waited for a long, long time until he began to get sleepy. "I'll just take a quick nap here in the soft grass, and then in the cool of the day, I'll finish the race." So he lay down and closed his eyes. Meanwhile, the tortoise plodded on. He passed the sleeping hare and was approaching the finish line when the hare awoke with a start. It was too late to save the race. Much ashamed, he crept away while all the animals at the finish line acclaimed the winner. And of course, the famous moral of the hare and the tortoise is, right, slow and steady wins the race, right? So my friend Michael says, I think it's slow is sure and sure is fast, right? Sometimes we're in such a hurry, we end up botching whatever it is we're doing, and then we have to do it again, which means we've taken a lot more time than we needed to if we had just slow and steady, keep on track. That's what wins the race. Okay, let's see. So the next one is usually known as the boy who cried wolf. In this version, it's called the shepherd boy and the wolf. Okay. Every day, the shepherd boy was sent with his father's sheep into the mountain pasture to guard the flock. It was, indeed, a lonely spot at the edge of a dark forest, and there were no companions with whom he could pass the long, weary hours of the day. One day, just to stir up some excitement, he rushed down from the pasture crying, "Wolf! Wolf!" The villagers heard the alarm and came running with clubs and guns to help chase the marauder away, only to find the sheep grazing peacefully and no wolf in sight. So well had the trick worked that the foolish boy tried it again and again. And each time the villagers came running, only to be laughed at for their pains. But there came a day when a wolf really came. The boy screamed and called for help, but all in vain. The neighbors, supposing him to be up to his old tricks, paid no heed to his cries, and the wolf devoured the sheep. Right? And of course, again, one of the absolutely most famous of Aesop's fables, right? And the moral of this story is, of course, liars are not believed even when they tell the truth. Right? Okay. And the last of, I think, the five most popular or well-known fables is The Lion and the Mouse. Okay? And this one is too. It's a little bit longer than the first two, but it's absolutely charming. Okay. A lion was asleep in his den one day when a mischievous mouse, for no reason at all, ran across the outstretched paw and up the royal nose of the king of beasts, awakening him from his nap. The mighty beast clapped his paw upon the now thoroughly frightened little creature and would have made an end of him. "Please," squeaked the mouse, "don't kill me. Forgive me this time, O king, and I shall never forget it. A day may come, who knows, when I may do you a good turn to repay your kindness." The lion, smiling at his little prisoner's fright and amused by the thought that so small a creature could ever be of assistance to the king of beasts, let him go. Not long afterward, the lion, while ranging the forest for his prey, was caught in the net which the hunters had set to catch him. He let out a roar that echoed through the forest. Even the mouse heard it, and recognizing the voice of his former preserver and friend, ran to the spot where he lay tangled in the net of ropes. Well, your majesty," said the mouse, "I know you did not believe me once when I said I would return a kindness, but here is my chance." And without further ado, he set to work to nibble with his sharp little teeth at the ropes that bound the lion. Soon the lion was able to crawl out of the hunter's snare and be free. Right? And of course, the great lesson from the story of the lion and the mouse is that no deed of kindness, however small, is ever wasted. It's never insignificant, right? What a lovely lesson to teach our children. What a lovely story to remind us of such a simple truth. Oop, sorry about the noise. All right. So I picked 3 more of what I think are the most impactful of the lesser known of Aesop's fables. Okay, so let's see. Here we go. Okay. So the first one is called The Miller, His Son, and Their Donkey. This one's also a little on the longer side. Actually, this is the longest one I'm going to read. Okay. A miller and his son were driving their donkey to a neighboring fair to sell him. They had not gone far when they met a group of girls returning from town, laughing and talking together. "Look there," one of them cried. "Did you ever see such fools to be trudging along the road on foot when they ought to be riding?" So the man put the boy on the donkey, and they went on their way. Presently they came up to a group of old men in earnest debate. "There," said one of them, "that proves exactly what I was saying. No one pays any respect to old age in these days. Look at that idle young rogue riding while his poor old father has to walk. Get down, you lazy lout, and let the old man rest his weary limbs." The miller made his son dismount and got on the donkey's back in his place. And in this manner, they proceeded along the way until they met a company of women and children. "Why, shame on you, lazy bones," they cried. "How can you ride while that poor little lad can hardly keep up with you?" The good miller, wishing to please, took up his son to sit behind him. But just as they reached the edge of the village, a townsman called out to them, "I have a good mind to report you to the authorities for overloading that poor beast so shamelessly. You big hulking fellows should better be able to carry that donkey than the other way around." So, alighting, the miller and his son tied the beast's legs together, and with a pole across their shoulders, carried the donkey over the bridge that led to the town. This was such an entertaining sight to the townsfolk that crowds came out to laugh at it. The poor animal, frightened by the uproar, began to struggle to free himself. In the midst of the turmoil, the donkey slipped off the pole and over the rail of the bridge into the water and was drowned. And of course, the moral is, try to please all, and you end up by pleasing none. It's so easy to fall for the criticism of others, or to feel like we have to match up to other people's expectations, when really what's most important is that we live up to our loved ones' expectations and our own expectations, right? Okay. The next of the little known but impactful tales is called The Crow and the Pitcher. A crow, so thirsty that he could not even caw, came upon a pitcher which once had been full of water. But when he put his beak into the pitcher's mouth, he found that only a little water was left in it. Strive and strive as he might, he was not able to reach far enough down to get at it. He tried to break the pitcher, then to overturn it, but his strength was not equal to the task. Just as he was about to give up in despair, a thought came to him. He picked up a pebble and dropped it into the pitcher. Then he took another pebble and dropped that into the pitcher. One by one, he kept dropping pebbles into the pitcher until the water mounted to the brim. Then, perching himself upon the handle, he drank and drank while his thirst was quenched. Right? Necessity is, after all, the mother of invention. Right? But what a really cute way of illustrating that story. Okay. And the last one. The last one is called The Wind and the Sun. And, okay, here we go. A dispute once arose between the wind and the sun over which was the stronger of the two. There seemed to be no way of settling the issue, but suddenly they saw a traveler coming down the road. "This is our chance," said the sun, "to prove who is right. Whichever of us can make that man take off his coat shall be the stronger. And just to show you how sure I am, I'll let you have the first chance." So the sun hid behind a cloud, and the wind blew an icy blast. But the harder he blew, the more closely did the traveler wrap his coat around him. At last, the wind had to give up in disgust. The sun came out from behind the cloud and began to shine down upon the traveler with all his power. The traveler felt the sun's genial warmth, and as he grew warmer and warmer, he began to loosen his coat. Finally, he was forced to take it off altogether and to sit down in the shade of a tree and fan himself. So the sun was right, after all. Right? And the moral of this is one of those where I don't think the moral is particularly obvious, but the moral is persuasion is better than force, right? The wind is blowing and blowing, trying to get him to take his coat off. And the sun just comes out and warms him until the man of his own volition, is persuaded to take his coat off. So those are Aesop's fables. There's, 100 plus more of them, all charming tales, nourishing for the soul. And so whether it's for you, your grandchildren, your children, your grandchildren, I can never remember if he's my grandnephew. I think he's my grandnephew, not my great nephew. I think I'm his great uncle, but he's my grandnephew. I hope someday to be able to read them to him. He's a little young now, not even a year old, so I don't think he'd quite get them. But they're wonderful stories. These days when the day is shorter and the weather is chillier, to sit with a child and read them some wonderful stories, maybe with a cup of hot chocolate. You can always put a nip of whiskey into your chocolate if you want to. Okay, no one will tell. What a wonderful way to spend a little bit of time on a late fall and winter evening. So I thank you so much for joining me. And this Thanksgiving is next week, speaking of the fall, late fall. And so I wish you and yours the most meaningful and wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope you have an opportunity to spend it with people about whom you care and love deeply. And you have wonderful food, whether you're having the traditional turkey or something less traditional. And look forward to seeing you at Jiggers Place again in a couple of weeks. And that only leaves me to do my sign off. I never got to talk about Aesop's Fables with my dear Marie. I wish I had. I have a feeling she would have loved them. But just a reminder, Marie, darling, up in Shemaim, up in heaven, you are my bell. Courage at all times, my friends.